Good. Thank you. Yep, good.
Good. So dropping to the next level, fire inspections, we do various community risk reduction activities. We've obviously worked with the state fire marshal this past couple years with some of the smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. We do visits with the schools. We can liquor licenses, and as it's requested, special ones as they're requested from either building department. So, and then obviously we work with our mutual aid assistance and the WAMA and WAMAC partnerships that we have throughout the 3 counties. Just a side note for those, the additional involvement, in case you didn't know, the Washtenaw Hazardous Material Authority on that board. Firefighter Blanchard has been a team member since 2016. The Washtenaw County Technical Rescue Team, Captain Smith has been a member since 2017. Firefighter Heslop and Roskins have been members since 2023. Michigan Task Force 1 is our USAR level state asset. Captain Smith has been a member, and really he's one of those that they kind of depend on because he is a structural engineer. And when you talk about building collapses, things of that nature, he gets called on quite often and has been deployed the last couple years to different ones. Luckily, they've all been close. Flint had a building collapse. Dundee had the tornado go through there, and he was a structural engineer for MUSAR. So those are some of the things. And then Mabus last year, again, some of these chiefs are seasoned individuals, and they're looking for some new blood to come in and try and help move Mabus along. And so Mabus is, if say Lansing has a fire that they need some resources, they can request it throughout the state. The Mabus divisions will say whether they're available or not available, and we could send a tanker task force, we could send an engine strike force. There's a bunch of different terminology for that, but it's available throughout the state. Another layer of resources that we have available to us. Expenditures for 2024, 2025, just so you see what we've been doing. The board had asked for a second duty program. We added that in. That's currently at 93 hours per week. That's a 48-hour weekend coverage. That's a second person in addition to our full-time staff. And during Reynolds, working the daytime shift, we have a small window in the middle that we get a lot of paid on call coming back in, so it tends to help us out. We replaced 2 pulse ox and end-tidal meters this year, various firefighter and EMS equipment that we've been able to purchase and get into use in our people's hands. Multiple sets of boots and helmets. I'll get to that as that's a grant-related item. 400 feet of firefighting hose. The Assistance to Fire grant we received, that was the $45,000 worth of equipment that we received for about $3,600. So that's our 10% match, and we're still in for a little bit more, but with FEMA on hold right now, we're kind of letting things settle out to see where we need to be. So Station 2, we replaced 3 sections of the sidewalk. We replaced the hot water heater at Station 2, and then last year we went online with the burn permit website, which is receiving a lot of the website, and they like to physically come in. I think it's more that they like to see the staff in the office. So we do have a few paper documents that are still floating around. Some more expenditures training wise, we sent 3 personnel to firefighter certification class this year. They should be finishing up, I believe May 10th is the EMT certification. 2 more personnel are due to complete their Fire Officer 1 class at the end of May. We've sent multiple people to our Blue Card Incident Command, which is a county-wide initiative that was paid for through the classes we send people to, and then we're still continuing some of the extras that are beyond the personnel costs. The CIP purchase for the current year we're in, obviously Tanker A1 purchased and had that put in July and August. We were able to purchase 15 sets. We paid for 12. 3 of the sets were done through a grant through the state of Michigan, so we saved around $11,000 by getting that grant. And then the DNR grant, we're still working on. We're waiting for equipment to come in, and then that's a reimbursement grant. So. Again, revenue for us is Northfield Fires has a dedicated millage. Some of the other additional revenues that we get, we do driveway inspections, address, number assignments. We've got grants that we received, and you'll see when we break it down, a lot of money coming in from the grants received. We're still doing emergency $1,000 worth of attorney fees, so there's still some soft recovery there. Earned interest from the accounts that the treasurer has been able to take care of for us, and we'll see that in a breakdown. From the general fund, mainly the fire truck. Verizon cell phone tower gives Station 2 some of its revenue for some of the major initiatives out there that we've worked on. So overall, the 206 is the main one that we operate out of. The 211 is the cell phone tower revenue. When we looked at it for the current year, it was estimated at 1.1 million. Next year, Woodhill has given us an estimate of 1.232. So it's about a $36,000 increase. I'm sorry, the $36,000 built into it. We've got a further breakdown in that sheet. So we're expecting about 1.268 for revenue for next year, and that's the estimate. It's about an $86,000 increase for us. And then the Station 2 stays pretty much, that's a signed agreement. It's usually about 18 to 19,000. So what you'll see in the middle column is what we've done for this year. So we're starting to get more house address assignments, which is the house numbers and some of the driveway inspections. Obviously in the wintertime, that's very slow. Cost recovery, we estimate about 1,500, where we've got 4,000 so far this year. Interest income, which we greatly appreciate, is at 41,000 when it was estimated at 8. So we scaled that down this year, not knowing how much our fund balance was going to be and what that would bring in. That is, so we've got income from various grants that we put in there. We had one gentleman who included the fire department in his will. He was a former firefighter here, and I've only had a couple conversations with him before he passed, which we talked to the attorneys about and made sure they were all good with what was going on. So luckily for us, this year we are up about $100,000 in revenue that we didn't expect from last year. Again, I talked about grants and the reward. We did the Washington 100 grant, which is part of what Deputy Chief Reynolds was awarded for his Firefighter of the Year award. They gave him a $2,500 equipment or training grant for that. The full-time staffing turnout gear grant, again, we had 3 full-time people the way the state broke it down, so they gave us an extra $10,500 to pay for a set of gear for them. The Michigan DNR grant is the one that we're currently in. It's just short of $10,000, which was the limit. It's for 11 boots and 5 helmets, I believe. We've gotten some of those in, but we expect that we'll pay $4,900 for our matching 50% of that. And then obviously the AFG was the big one with the $45,000 worth of equipment, and our matching's 36. So we did fairly well with that, filling some holes that we needed last year. Salaries, and these are the employee portion. You've got salaries on several aspects there. The first line is your administrative staff, so that's 3 of us. The second salary line is your 3 full-time. Salaries part-time, this is going to be the big one that changes. We originally last year, or this year, we were budgeted for $100,000. We added that second duty program, which estimates were very well could be depending on who we had work it, because of the pay rates, could have been as much as 120,000. This year I've looked at it at the end of March, and it is about just short of 5,000 hours, and about $50,000 is all that the second duty program has added so far. So we are going to be over budget in that line item, but the previous board had approved us to go over. So we're hoping that the extra revenue that we have will help us offset that. And then various other items there that are in the workshop budget that we tried to change and adjust based on the current market and what we were doing. Again, another one that's set. So we do supplies, contractual services, dispatching service with Emergent Health. Some of our communications is we have tablets in the trucks. A majority of the bigger trucks all have a tablet in them where they can get information, receive calls, look up apps that will help us with hazardous materials response. So those are the general things. What you'll look down in the middle section, the fund. So Station 2 only, the only person who puts money into that is the fire department. So any of the expenses, electric, gas, repairs and maintenance, things like that are come out of the 206 budget. So as we hold more meetings and more things there, the LPC committee gathers there once a month. We have a few others that have contacted us, and we've allowed them to use that training room for the time being. So various repairs and maintenance, things like that. So key items in this budget, and we'll go a little bit more into it as you're thinking, is there's a 3% raise for the non-union staff. That's essentially 2 people, not including me. Raises for the contractual firefighters. Since we signed the contract earlier this year, there were increases that will take effect July 1st. Increase in part-time salary allocations, which are the part-time staffing, training wages. That's the second duty program, so all of that's included in there. We wanted to maintain our equipment budget. We budgeted a fairly larger than normal equipment budget last year. It helped out quite a bit with bringing in, replacing some old equipment, changing some things over. And I say in there, you know, technology advances, some of the standards that we work on are advancing, so we wanted to be able to move that equipment around and grab some of the newer stuff that's out there that'll help make life significantly easier for us to achieve some of our goals. Oops, I think we missed a couple. Fire station, actually go back a couple, please, Chief. No. Turnout gear. While he's working on that, I know the board members have it. Turnout gear. So some of the things I'm going to talk about now are the CIP. It's turnout gear. Again, we got a good start last year with getting 15 sets. That gives us a very good jump on it. It's $3,500 a set. So it makes for a big expense. We've split that up in the CIP to do about 5 sets per year. Luckily with the grant, we got the 3 basically at no cost to the township. So we were 15 sets last year. We're asking for another 5 sets. We know the price will go up. It's a very expensive equipment to buy. So we'll get 5 more sets this year. That'll cover us up to 20 sets, which will be right about where our current personnel staffing is at. And we'll kind of go from there based on new employees that we should get. So Fire Station 2, the 211 fund. So we wanted to take a look at Replacing the AC unit, we had a company come out do an inspection on the furnace. The furnace was good. There was a couple things they wanted to correct, and that was back in September. We had them do that. The AC unit is a very old unit, does not cool very well out at that building. It's really just needs to be taken care of at this point. We put in $15,000, but when we went through and got a single bid right now in order to work on it, it's more around $11,000, so it's not going to be the full, but obviously we'll try and work with some more vendors and get ourselves the best pricing that we can. That 211 fund, like I said, comes from the cell tower, and so in the previous years, we've added 5 apparatus doors or replaced those. The training room and the officers' rooms were refurbished, repainted, tile, carpet, various things out there. The gutters have been replaced, the exterior has been repainted. The 2 to 3 sections of sidewalk were replaced last year. The 4 large pines that we were worried about doing damage to the building that did, those got removed. So there's a lot of things that we're doing with that money that's showing up there. And then the next page is the capital improvement. So for this year, we had in our CIP that we worked out with Woodhill was a new brush truck. The current one is a 1996 Ford F-250. It's just around 15,000 miles for a 30-year-old truck. Felt last
Actual
year.
miles?
What's that?
Actual miles?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was limited in its use. When I say that is its assignments were limited. So we wanted to expand its ability. The original truck was purchased for $27,000. I have already have interested parties that are talking about $20,000. So the truck will definitely have paid for itself at this point. The skid unit that's in the back is reusable. It's a 50-year skid unit. We just replaced the pump in it 2 to 3 years ago. So the actual skid unit comes out of the truck, slides into the next one, and we'll go from there. Various dealerships. We have one that is local, and when I say local, it's Grand Rapids versus the other ones in Georgia. It's very difficult to get fleet pricing because of the way Chevrolet and Ford do it. So we have to be very flexible in how we get a hold of these trucks to do that work. So that's our plan is a 2025, 2024 Chevy. We want to do a 3500 HD with the large bed that will accommodate the skid unit. And I will say this now, I will probably be back here, not today, but the next meeting in 2 weeks, asking to see if I can accelerate that purchase. The reason I say that is with some of the tariffs and instability in the market, I'm afraid that the pricing that we have will definitely go up. So I'm trying to lock us in as best as I can. And I think there's some fear in the public safety sector of fire trucks and apparatus and parts and pieces going up. So we're trying to keep an eye on what's going on with it. So slide 17, when you look at the top, the expenditures of the 206 fund without the CIP is 1.3 million. The expenditures with the CIP puts us close to 1.443. And obviously that includes the brush truck, the turnout gear, and the Station 2 HVAC system for the air conditioning. So this is where the net revenue of it, and again, it doesn't concern me too much as I know this is the direction that we wanted to go. Our revenue is going to be 1.268, but our expenditures are going to be 1.36. You add the CIP spending to it, and we're going to be in the red about 175. $96,000 for this year. That includes, again, $95,000. You'll see the net revenue adjust a negative $95,000, and that's just in the 206 fund, and that's specifically for the second duty program. Without that, we're at a +5. The 175 will, in our current forecast that Woodhill gave us and what was amended, we were going to be just below $1 million in our fund balance. So 175,000 will take a chunk out of that, but with $100,000 in revenue from the current year that we're in, and if we happen to be as lucky as we were last year, push in and be well over 1 million instead of the 990 that's forecast. And then slide 19. My concern, or accounting concerns that I listed here are, there were different allocations to costs. You'll see the top two are the public safety building and the grounds and cleaning and janitorial services. I honestly don't have any problems with those. The building needs to run, needs to have electric, gas, and we share in some of its expenses. But we also tend to try and take care of the building as much as we can. My biggest concerns were the allocated personnel to funds and allocated cost of funds. When you take a look at those, each one of those over the last 2 years, I believe the allocation personnel to funds is up 64% in 2 years, and the allocated cost to funds is up 85% in 2 years. So 2 years ago, we were at $21,000 in cost or allocated cost to the township. This year, and these figures were given to us by Woodhill, is up to $37,000. I'm aware that I need to help pay for payroll and some of the other things. I just feel like this is an extreme amount that's being asked for from Woodhill towards the general fund to help pay for some services. I've seen some other breakdowns of what those services are, and it just concerns me that it's out of proportion of what it should be. You know, the one they gave me allocated costs paid for the audit and accounting fees. If you add 4 departments together, that cost is almost $100,000. However, the audit was only $26,000. So that must mean 70,000 of it is for associated accounting. And that just seems disproportionate. My department has stayed about 17, 18, 19 people, but my cost is going up 64% for some of those personnel funds. So I just don't think that it is proportionate to what we're actually using. Any questions?
Mr. Only.
Just get an understanding of this allocated to personnel funds and allocated cost of funds. The allocated to personnel funds, that's getting paid to township staff
That's getting paid to the general fund.
to pay for township staff service.
That was the definition that was given to me last year.
All right, so to pay for township staff running payroll, for township staff running reports, I'm just looking for a little more detail. And then the allocated cost of funds is for, this says covers audit and accounting fees, so that is getting paid to Woodhill?
That again, we pay towards the general fund. How it gets allocated out, I honestly don't know. That is a figure that Woodhill gave me, and those were some of the definitions that they gave me last year. I've not seen any additional criteria on how it's used and what services it's paying for. Obviously, they're here tonight, so they could probably answer those a little bit better than I could.
Ms. Chick, is your mic on?
So this actually came up last year as well, about the allocations, and when questioned, where those numbers came from. There had never been a time study done. It was basically, staff was asked approximately how much time do you spend on fire department issues, and it was a guesstimate. So we have nothing to document, or no documentation to confirm that number. It's just a guesstimate. So I'm wondering where that guesstimate is justified.
And I don't personally have a answer for you.
Thank you.
Otto?
I think if we ever get to that, we may have to have individuals allocate their time to different cost centers as they're doing their work. This way, it would help identify that, is what is going into it. I'm going to take, for instance, the deputy treasurer. I know that there's some allocation of her time taken to it, but we don't do it on a monthly basis. It's like 2 times a year that we work on fire and police millages. It's not something that we do on a monthly basis. So I would have to say, if we're going to get to that point, we may have to do that, is to have cost funding allocated for payroll.
And I understand that. And again, I'm willing to pay for what is proportionally appropriate for the fire service. But I also want, or would like it taken into account the services that we provide for the building. Because I was here on Super Bowl Sunday, working the fire alarm in this building for about 2 hours as we were clearing the dry system, and I had people in here. So there are things we do for the building that I don't think I definitely know previously we did not get credit for with the previous township manager. He did indicate to us last year that, well, maybe you need to start writing that stuff down. And I will be blatantly honest and say that I have better things to do for this community than try and nitpick the administrative side or the fire or the wastewater treatment. I have way more better things to do, but if this board wants that, I guess we'll allocate some time to do those things. Like this week, I have no problem doing the things that I'm asked to do, just as long as the fire department gets credit for that. So I worked with Mr. Roman this week on a couple issues in the building and trying to get through those. We've worked on some stuff in the back. Believe it or not, we've had an issue with waste management, so we've been working on that for a couple weeks to try and get those issues resolved. So I know I'm out there doing it. I just want to make sure the department gets the credit for what it needs, that it's not a one-way street, that we do extra stuff for the township services.
Anyone else? Mr. Marco?
This might be a question for Woodhill, too. Is the township office staff is budgeted for in the general fund, correct? So you also budget for the payments from police and fire then in there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's,
We count for that as revenue coming in, and so we have a whole calculation that we do. So we ask the staff, how much time, ask Jennifer, how much time do you spend on AP? She estimates, I don't know what she said. And we take that percentage of her time and we figure out how much AP was issued by department. And so we take that percentage of her salary and allocate it by, say, the number of invoices that were paid to fire or to police.
I just think we're going to have to, we went through the same thing last year. We're going to have to come to a decision. Do we want Chief Bishop and Chief Smith to give us an itemized bill for the stuff they do for the township? You're right. I know you guys do so much around here. All you guys do. And I know the girls and the ladies in the office do the payroll and, invoices and such. I think we're just going to have to come to a decision. Do we just say, forget this and let them have their budget? Or are we going to have to, I don't want to go down the road of having you turn in a a tick list of what you've done for the township and how many hours you give back to the township that's not police and fire. So I don't know, it's just the same thing we went through last year.
Yeah, and I'm, this is not a us versus them. It is, I can use that money just as much as the township or the administrative side. I don't have the ability, the general fund gets money, state cost sharing, is that they get that, they get money from some of the marijuana facilities and how they do it. PD gets community health money, but I'm not saying that don't get money, because obviously I got $365,000 from this board last year. So I just want to know, I'm willing to pay as long as we can come to a decision then, and I'm not looking at 85% increases, or even if we have to add a 40% increase year after year, because I think that that's the problem that I have is I don't think that's a fair proportion of what's going on. And again, we tried to make it a little bit easier by putting the online burn permits, so the administrative staff is not dealing with that as much, obviously. If some of the papers you'd see, I'd come in on a Friday and it's an inch thick, and so the online portion has taken some of that away. So we're trying to help alleviate some of the time that they were working and make it easier for all of us.
I agree. Before I go to Mr. Only, I agree with Mr. Moko's statement, and I don't know exactly how it goes from here, but I agree with his comments. Mr. Only.
Yeah, I was on board with Mr. Moko and Mr. Roman that, I mean, if this might be getting to the police, but Officer Powell was up here, hours of work with the audiovisual, hours of work with trying to get the doors figured out and trying to get the new swipe cards on these doors. If he wanted to, charge a bill to the township for that, I mean, we'd probably be breaking even with just the work that Officer Powell's done. So I think we either need to take that into consideration or wipe this out, or stick with something more accurate to what the fiscal year 2024 was, and then just do, like the 3%, increase or something like that. But this 64 and 85 is extreme, and when it's time to make a decision on it, I think we need to.
And I may
Vision in
honestly,
favor of police and fire.
and I may be honestly shooting myself in the foot. It may actually be a cost higher than that if we were to break it down.
Oh.
But I don't know that because I don't
Yours
have the
might be as well
information.
for services that you provide
Yes,
to
sir.
the township.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Ms. Chick?
Yeah, I think we need to, not a question, a comment. We need to resolve that this year before the next budget so that this doesn't keep coming up every year. So if we either go with a straight percentage across the board for those services or just not charge them. So we have to make that decision.
My question would be, as a new board member, when is that decision made then? It's not made tonight? Oh, no. Okay, then when is it made?
It would be before the budget is finalized.
All right.
Either you
Thank you. Chief Smith? As long as it takes, Chief.
Unfortunately, I shut down Chris's computer and didn't have his password, so I apologize for you not being able to see it on the screen, so. For the new board members, I know the previous board has heard this before, but just to give you an understanding of the overview of what the police revenue is and where we get our money, the funding for the police department comes primarily from the dedicated police millage, which you all are aware of that we went out a couple years ago and got an increase so that we could get an SRO and additional officers on midnights. Aside from the police millage, we get a supplement from the police budget. It's funded by the Washtenaw County Mental Health millage money. And that is a percentage that we don't know exactly how much that is each year. So Woodhill graciously estimates what we're going to get from that millage each year. And it's usually above what they estimate, which is a benefit to us. And then additional revenue comes from fines and fees, permits, and other contributions that we get throughout the year. So with that being said, all those estimated for the revenues for our estimated end of budget this year was $2,805,547. Our budget for next year is estimated to be at $3,001,944. So there's a slight increase, obviously, in what we're going to get revenue-wise. So the next slide shows our police fund revenue specific. So if you want to know exactly where we're getting money from, this tells you exactly where the items are that we're getting. It breaks down the property tax or the police millage, the mental health millage. And if you look in the far right corner, that's what our estimated or my recommended budget's going to be on those items that we have for revenue. If you'll see, some of them are substantially lower than what we actually have, but I have to keep them low because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to be able to make those fines and fees, or I don't know what the mental health millage money is going to be. So if you go to the next slide, it gives you a basic overview of what the police department's spending overview is going to be. So it's a 7% change from 2024-25 to 2025-26. So our overall budget increase is 7%. And items of significance in that budget increase include the 12-hour work days for patrol officers with no short shifts. So in other words, all my officers work 84 hours in 2 weeks instead of 80. So that increase, that 7% helps cover that increase for the officers. The police department drone program is in there. We are advancing our drone program, as you know. We ran into the snafu with having to buy American, so we're working on that. The budget includes the police officers and command staff increase of 4%. That's a guesstimate because we don't have, I had to put something in the budget. The tentative agreement hasn't been reached yet, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be the rate that the officers are going to accept is the 4% increase. And then some of that 7% goes to increased training and specialized assignments. The next slide shows our labor costs. So this is a breakdown of what it costs me for my staff that work for the police department. The command staff is an increase of $8,000, so they're going from $488,000 to $497,000 for the year. That also includes my salary. Patrol is going from $672 to $684, so that's an $11,000 increase from the previous budget year. Our admin staff is going up $6,000. That's Shannon and Sue that work in my front office there. Part-time, you can see there's a decrease. We no longer have any part-time officers, so the part-time item that's in there is when we pay our reserve officers who work like German Park or something. So I have to have something on the books to pay them out of. So, and even though we get reimbursed on that, I still need to have a line item in there for that reason. And then you'll see janitorial went up slightly. And then the additional labor costs, you're going to see a very large increase in that. And you're going to see where it went from 620 to 894,000. So there's an increase of 274,000 on that labor cost. I'm sorry, 291,000 on the labor costs. Well, when you break that down, now this is not the total, this is an increase. So my increase for pension contributions went from 129 and add 169,000 onto that. So we're over $340,000 for pension contributions out of my budget. Hospitalization went up $36,000. So that's $36,000 added on to what the hospitalization was prior. Just so if you look at the 291,000, almost $200,000 or over $200,000 is coming from pension and hospitalization. So I just want you to kind of be aware of that. The next slide shows you the breakdown of how I'm hoping our contracts work out. So you guys are aware, patrol officers will get a 4% raise, sergeants will get a 4% raise, the police lieutenant will get a 4% raise, and then he's going to get, well, if it's approved, a 3% bump on top of his overall percentage above what he makes over a sergeant. So currently sergeants make 13% more than officers, and the lieutenant makes 10%. My thought process on that is that if I'm paying somebody 13% over what they're covering the sergeants, then the lieutenant should make 13% over what the sergeants are. So the lieutenant will get an overall increase of 7%. And administrative assistants are going to get the 3% that we believe that the township's going to provide the non-union personnel. So the next slide is our operating costs. This is a breakdown, just like the other ones were, that show what we're paying for each item on there. It breaks it down, and you'll see that pretty much for the most part, everything has been increased by 5%. That was an estimate, and Woodhill Group said you should probably increase everything by 3 to 5%. So we just went on the high end. It was either 3 or 5%. So you'll see that the overall totals from the amended budget for this year, $246,550, and then our overall budget estimated for next year is going to be $284,551. Next item that I want to address is the police department community engagement, which is something we instituted last year. We budgeted money for it, and you'll see that we didn't ask for an increase in community engagement money. We left it the same because we're currently under what we budgeted, but we're also embarking on more items for the community. And some of those that we've done, we established and participated in multiple events, created continued partnerships within the community and the county. So we've been active in the community, and we've been active in the county with our community engagement. Examples include, but are not limited to, the following: National Night Out, which I think everybody enjoys. We had the Shades of Pink charity comedy show, which was everybody liked. I know Mr. Romans enjoyed that because he won a lot of prizes. And then we have this year, we have our first annual T-Wall golf tournament. And T-Wall is a charity out of Ann Arbor that basically honors Make-A-Wish to disabled children. So we partner with T-Wall and Captain Joe's and a couple other entities in the community to put on this event. And that's going to be our first one, and it's going to be in June of this year. Now, had I not had this community engagement money to operate with, it would be really difficult to pull some of these things off, because we have a community engagement officer, and Officer Champagne, who's working tirelessly to get all this stuff in place. So that's why I budgeted that money and left it in this year. Our community engagement officer attends monthly meetings with the area police departments and has formed an excellent relationship with the other agencies that we work with: Ann Arbor, Pittsfield, the county, Hamburg, Green Oak. I mean, she's all around us. She's incorporating what we're trying to build with those agencies. And it's pretty obvious to see how much impactful we've had since our first National Night Out to our last one. I think we're up to like 13 or 14 different departments and fire departments that are at the National Night Out. So then the next slide is our police department transportation budget. So this is what it costs for us to have the vehicles for repair and maintenance. And normally we come in under, but you never know what's going to happen. So we budgeted basically the 3% increase in both line items. Some of the significant items that we need to make sure that I'm paying attention to are the increase in fuel costs, coincides with the additional patrol vehicle use that we have, because now we have an additional vehicle on nights. So that pushes up what our costs are for fuel. And then repairs and maintenance stay the same, as we eliminated patrol vehicles that were outdated in our CIP plan. So we're getting new vehicles, which is less maintenance on things that can go wrong with an older vehicle. And most of the stuff that we have now, when there's an issue, is covered by warranty. So we're okay, that helps us alleviate some of the problems. So I compliment Carlene and the Woodhill Group for getting us on the CIP plan, because I think it helps us and it keeps our equipment functional without having to basically sink money into something. The next one is our equipment. The equipment is basically the CIP plan that she talked about in her presentation. And this is a breakdown of what that equipment is. It's our vehicles that we purchase. It's our computer, hardware, software stuff. And then the equipment is like tasers, guns, vests, anything that would help an officer do his job on the road. And then our legal professional, we just budgeted the increase that was recommended by Woodhill. So there's nothing, there's nothing huge there. We're normally within our range for that. Knock on wood, we won't have to use them very much. And then, of course, the next slide is what Chief Bishop talked about. And as Ms. Chick and Ms. Otto discussed earlier, this was an item last year that brought both myself and Chief Bishop to concern because we were concerned about what exactly it is that we're paying for. So in mine this year, I put allocation, and I'm like Chief Bishop, I have no problem paying for the building. I have no problem paying for janitorial services and things like that. My issue is with items that we pay for that the general fund is already paying. And it would be part of their salary anyway, whether they were paying our payroll or fire department's payroll or wastewater treatment plant's payroll. Those are my concerns. So with that being said, in 24-25, I can't tell you what the increase was, but I know it was substantial, like Chief Bishop's was. But the increase for that 24-25 to 25-26 is 21%. Now, I would love to give my officers a 21% raise, to give, 21% is a lot of money. When you stop and think about it, it's a lot of money. And if you add up the totals for just the allocation to personnel funds and allocation to costs, last year there was an attempt to put an INF, which is what Chief Bishop was talking about, the specific, well, you got to pay for paper, you got to pay for copiers, you got to do this, you got to do that. And that was where the former township manager said, well, you guys can give us an itemized of what you guys are doing. And I said, I really don't have time for that. We are a township that's working together. That shouldn't be an issue. If I owe money, I'll pay money. I don't have a problem with that. My concern is what am I getting for this money? Well, Woodhill Group gave me a little list, and I just highlighted a few of what that covers. So last year, I paid $3,500 to the township manager for his support. Well, I don't answer to the township manager. I answer to the board. So I don't understand where that's coming from. If I need support, I'm coming to the board. I'm not going to the township manager. That's not my job. The next thing is $5,400 to the assistant manager or Jennifer for board business support. So my administrative assistant writes my reports and turns them over to Jennifer. So am I paying $5,400 for her to make copies to give to you? And then I realize out of that $5,400, she's paying our bills, but I pay the bills. I tell her where the accounts come from. All she's doing, I'm not trying to minimize what she does, but I give her where the money's got to come out of what account and where it comes from. So she's plugging it in and paying the checks online or having them printed out. So and then the deputy treasurer, I pay $3,200 for banking. Okay, I mean, $3,200, what am I getting for banking? I know that she collects her tax rolls. When I get a check, I give it to her and she has it deposited. So I mean, I'm just pointing out. And then the one that kind of bothers me is I love April. April is the one who caught the pension problem for me. So this has nothing to do with April. This has to do with the fact that I'm paying $11,000 a year for payroll. For payroll. I mean, my administrative assistant puts all the time sheets into the computer in BSNA. She sends them off to April, and then April does what she has to do from that end of it, which I don't know what she has to do, but I don't know that I'm getting $11,000 worth of work from somebody. That's just my concern. So, like I said, I have the same concerns that Chief Bishop did. I just was able to spell out some of what I had to pay. And then those numbers are coming from Woodhill Group. Those aren't numbers that I just grabbed out of the air. So with that being said, our budget comparisons from expenditures to revenues for last year, our estimated revenues is $3,001,944. My budget, the way it's presented to you today, is for $2,962,384, which leaves me a positive $39,560. So going into next year's budget, if this budget was approved with the numbers that are in there, I would have basically $40,000 left over at the end of my budget year. And obviously with some tactfulness with me on the budget, we should have more money. I mean, that's the plan. So some of the 2025-26 police department goals: continue and expand the development of the community engagement division for the foreseeable future. Continue to increase the training and education of all my patrol officers. reestablish the commercial vehicle enforcement. I'm not sure if the board is familiar with, Sergeant Roberts used to be our commercial vehicle enforcer, and then with basically not having the manpower, we couldn't put somebody on the road. Now we have two commercial vehicle enforcements, and Sergeant Roberts and then Eric McLaughlin, who was hired just recently, is also certified to do weights and measures on the road. Now, this isn't just being on the highway. There's a concern about trucks on the surface streets. And unfortunately, we're working with the township attorneys right now and the road commission to fix the problem because we're not posted correctly in the township. So we can't enforce the commercial vehicle laws because the postings aren't right. So they need to be fixed so that we can fix that. So we're, Lieutenant Powell and I are diligent working on getting that fixed and the right signage posted so then we can enforce those laws. We get constant complaints about people on surface streets with trucks, and I don't blame them for being upset. But unfortunately, if we can't write a ticket for it, it doesn't help us. So, then we're working on that. We're going to continue the path we started to establish and increase our community policing and presence so that my guys are out there talking to the businesses and talking to the people so they get to know who we are and what we're trying to do. Identify and incorporate federal, state, local grants for the increased benefit of the police department and the community at large. You all are aware of the fact that I put in for grants all the time. We get grant money for different things within the township. I presented a grant proposal to the township manager last year for permanent speed detection radar signs for Main Street and East Shore, or wherever the township wanted. It was a grant for $6,000. It would have cost $3,000 for 3 of them. And I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but they're mounted on street poles and they give the radar for Main Street, East Shore, Barker, wherever the township. I presented that grant to them and it went nowhere. So, I can't, it's not a police grant, it's a community grant. So I'm just letting you know that I'm trying to help the community, even though you may not be aware of it. Maintain a high level of standards and excellence within the members of the police department. So in other words, if I have somebody that isn't working, I'm not keeping them. If they're not doing their job or they're a detriment to this community or our department, I will not tolerate that. And so I'm going to make sure that the people know that my guys are out there doing their job the way it's supposed to be done. And if they're not, they won't be here very long. And provide the best possible police service and public safety to the citizens of Northfield Township. That's our goals for 2025, to continue what we're doing. And at that point, I realize I didn't bring up the federal and state forfeiture funds that we have, and that's because you can't budget those funds. Those funds are there and we have them to work with, but you can't budget those funds. And if you have questions about them, I do have information on that. So with that being said, I'll open it up for questions.
Do we have more money coming in from the narcotics fund?
From the state narcotics has been kind of squashed because of the way the state done it. So the state's kind of removed that aspect of it. But currently, Lieutenant Powell, when he was in the task force with the DEA, he still has roughly 20 to 26 DAGs, which is what we get money from. And because we pulled them out of there, we didn't quit the program. So when those DAGs get paid, we still get the money. And I think last year we brought in like almost $40,000 from the federal narcotics fund. And I believe, well, I can tell you right now, our federal narcotics fund is sitting at federal narcotics fund with the interest income coming from what we have in the bank right now, which is an additional $3,000. We're currently sitting at $149,000, and the estimate is $3,000 for interest. So next year's budget or next year's fiscal year, we're looking at $152,000 in our federal forfeiture fund, which, as most of the board knows, you can't use that for salaries. It can only be used for assets or training or things like that. So that money sits there and we use it. I basically use it to help update the police department. We updated the kitchen, we updated some bathrooms, and my intention is to update the dispatch area with some of that money. But that money is basically, we can use it for the building, we can use it for training, we can use it for equipment if we need it. And that's what the federal narcotics fund's for. We don't want to dip into that if we don't have to, because it's there for us, but it's also there like if we need to purchase something that's not in the budget and I don't have the money in the budget, instead of going into the fund balance, it allows me to go into the forfeiture fund. So it's basically another savings account for us to draw from if we need something that's not budgeted.
Anyone else? Mr. Only.
Bring this up, it might not be the time, but I need to know when the time is. Is the pension cost, is that finalized? We're settled with that? It doesn't need any more action from the board, or does that need to be brought back to the board to get figured out?
Well, my intention was to address the board in a closed session about that. However, just to answer your question, Mr. Only, it's not resolved. And the Woodhill Group did a study last year to show the township that if we stay on the course that we're on, in 4 years, I will be over budget. The increase in the pension program the increase in the pension contribution each year, plus an additional $50,000 to pay towards the unfunded liability, in 4 years' time, I won't have the money to do it anymore.
All right. So that needs to come back at a later date.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on, there's no announcements, petitions, communications. Any citizen comment at this time? Seeing none, board member comments. Mr. Only?
I had them already, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moko, Ms. Manley, Ms. Otto,
No, I'm fine.
Ms. Chick.
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Supported by Mr. Only. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. I'm doing it right now.